It's official. One Shining Podcast is back, and I am your host, Tate Frazier. And as March Madness begins, we're covering everything from Selection Sunday all the way to the championship and beyond. We're going to have great guests that are coming through on the show. And look, if you're a friend of the program and you're already subscribed, you don't have to do anything. OSP is back. It's going to be right back in your feed. And if you're not a friend of the program and this is your first time on the rodeo, then let me tell you this. You need to go to Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts and smash subscribe today because the OSP show is back.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining, as always, is the Ringers Jay Kyle. Man, what's up, man?
Not too much, Kevo. I saw you're like a celebrity. I saw you walking out there on stage with Verno in shades. Verno in shades on stage. Did he explain his choice there? It's just, I know Verno's ultra cool, but that was a choice. I respected it, but I was curious.
He had the fur coat on and all that, and the white fur coat. He had the shades on. It was truly the mismatch on stage on Monday night in Los Angeles at the El Rey Theater. That was a heck of a lot of fun, dude. I mean, those live shows, they're great. Like the one we did in Utah together, this one with the mismatch, we got Memphis coming up. Maybe we'll, if possible to work it out, we'll try to get you down there to Memphis on the 21st. That'll be a heck of a lot of fun. And I don't know, maybe the Ringer will be doing some more live shows coming up. Maybe the finals, maybe Summer League, something like that. But
Summer League for sure.
I like the live stuff. Summer League's awesome. Gonna do maybe a One Shining podcast live during Summer League talking about the NBA rookies, because the One Shining podcast with Tate Frazier is back. He was there on Monday night as well as a guest with me and Chris Vernon, and you were on his show. You're on OSP this week, Kyle, with Tate Frazier. That was cool.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing more of that here coming up during the tournament. So you and me and Tate are kind of in this little constellation, I feel like, of pre-NBA coverage that I'm really excited about. Excited to have. I'm going to be doing that on Tuesdays, I think. Tate and I are kind of aligned, and we have a parallel experience growing up in the South, like rooting for blue blood programs, and I've had a lot of fun with that, and excited to be doing more of it.
Well, Kyle, you talked an hour's worth of college basketball with Tate on One Shining Podcast this week. But to start off today's Ringer NBA Draft Show, we're going to be talking about the Overtime Elite, the Thompson twins, because their season is over. The Thompson twins and the City Reapers won the championship with a 3-game sweep over the YNG Dreamers. And they did it in really movie-like fashion with a back and forth. At the end of the game, City Reapers went up 1, then the Dreamers went up 1, timeout called, and then to end game 3, to finish a sweep, Amen Thompson makes a cross-court pass to Osar Thompson to win the game. After in game 2, Amen Thompson hit the game-winning layup just floating in the air on his way to the basket. So in game 2, we get Amen Thompson hitting a game-winning layup. In game 3, we get Osar Thompson hitting a game-winning 3. Kyle, they could not have written the script any better than this, right?
I mean, it played out in a nice, sequential way that was fun. And shout out to the OTE broadcast product for just being so high energy. I mean, I didn't feel like there was anything bizarre that happened. It wasn't I can't believe this sequence of events, but it was like a nonstop like punch, counter punch, punch, counter punch thing that was really fun. It kind of reminds me, like I always love these like broadcasts for these like pre-college, pre-NBA products that are like SUV TV is one I always point out. It's like the Georgia High School YouTube network. They have like some of the most fun announcers on there. Anyway, but yeah, you're right. Like floating in the air. I thought it was fun how it kind of played out. Their like brotherly dynamic kind of played out in the way that last play unfolded, and just like you described it, that like in Game 3 that Amin breaks down the defense and hits Asar for the game winner. They're just so. There are things that we'll get into, I think, about like the particulars about like the environment that they're playing in that I want to parse more with you a little bit. But I'll let you go ahead and start with what is it specifically that you're interested in talking about with the Thompsons today?
Well, I mean, I think first off, with Asar hitting the game-winning 3, that dude was on an absolute heater during their playoff run. He shot 38.5% from 3 in their 5-game playoffs. Super small sample size, of course. 3 of 10 in game 1, 3 of 5 in game 2, 4 of 9 in game 3, shooting 80+% from the free throw line for the City Reapers. So I think, we're talking small sample sizes here, but when you put it all together, what Amen and Asar did during the season and the playoffs together, Asar really shot well from 3 during the playoffs, but it's kind of wild how identical their stats are. Amen, full season plus playoffs combined, 16.5 points per game on 55.2% from 2, 30% from 3, 70.2% from the line. Asar, 17.4 points per game, 54.5% from 2, 33.3% from 3, 70% from the line. Amen, 7 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 3.5 stocks. Asar, 6.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 3.6 stocks. Like really, really close, basic box score numbers for those two guys over the course of the season. The big thing with them, jump shot, we talked about that at the beginning of the year. How much development do we see over the course of the season for them? It's at least encouraging, I think, Kyle, that both of them reached the 70% threshold from the free throw line. It's nice that they both shot over 30% from 3. It's great that we see Asar Thompson have hot stretches through the year from 3. It's nice we see Amen have that as well. Overall, though, I mean, they're still hovering around, below average from the free throw line, below average from 3. What's your initial assessment of their, development as shooters over the course of the season when factoring in that clearly they've been working on mechanics and making changes to their form throughout the year as well?
In terms of like the lines within their jump shot, in terms of like the mechanics, like is there, I'm kind of looking for the energy transfer. Are there any issues there? I think those are the things that are the most concerning whenever you watch a guy shoot the ball, because if their energy transfer is clean, maybe it starts a little bit low, maybe it comes across their face a little funny. We were talking about, I forget the exact player we were talking about last week, but they brought the ball across their face, sort of Kevin Durant kind of style. But if there are weird movements like that within their shot, you get a little more concerned. But when I watch the Thompson twins, I see something that is not terribly concerning, like when you consider all the other things that they're going to bring to the floor. Like I feel like their touch could get there to an acceptable level. I think you just kind of have to have a conversation with yourself about what you think, where you think they need to get to, A, not be a liability, and B, what do you think their ceiling is? And that's something that I don't know if you and I are on the same page about, or I'd be curious to ask you about. I feel like they can get to that point where they're not a liability, mainly because of the things that they bring. We've talked about like the competitiveness and the defensive intensity. You talked about them creeping up near the 70s from the free throw line. It is funny to look at their stats and consider their usage and see that, like, yeah, they basically just kind of Amen just tilts a little bit towards the playmaking side of it with like 1 assist more, 1 point fewer than his brother.
Yep.
It's just and you kind of have to really get in there. And I mean, this is a thing, like identical twins could probably hit us up and comment on this, but you have to really, really be looking really closely to see the differences. Not, their athleticism, there is like a little bit of a clear difference, I think, and a gap between Amen and Asar.
Amen being like a bit more explosive, a bit more quick twitch.
Yeah. But shooting wise, I guess they kind of project, Amen kind of projects to me as a guy who's going to be like a defensive disruptor. Hopefully he gets strong enough to be more of an on-ball or maybe even like a perimeter assignment type player. If he can do that and provide like connector offense on one end and just be a capable shooter, I'm trying to think of like Dyson Daniels as a guy. We're probably retracing steps in conversations we've had in the past, but I don't know. I don't see anything that's like that is like a huge issue within his shooting development that I don't think is fixable. Do you see anything in there that's like that's a huge problem and that like potentially could like slide him down? Or how do you feel about the shooting?
I mean, I always worry about, a guard or wing type that is a potential non-shooter. I think that's always a concern. I think with the way defenses handle those guys, all of them get the quote unquote Tony Allen treatment or the Andre Robertson treatment these days. Like, it's pretty important for you to become a reliable spot up shooter at the least. And they're different types of players, but I just think about Bruce Brown all the time with what he was able to turn himself into. He was a guy who was sub 30% from three. He was a liability outside, and he's become a guy that shoots the ball well on a lower volume. He was 40% last year with Brooklyn. This year he's 37% from Denver. Like, that's all he's got to be on a low volume, shoot the ball well, for kick out passes from Jokic. And you're going to be able to stay on the floor in end game situations, and you're going to be able to handle the ball sometimes and bring it up and be a disruptor on defense, which he is. It's critical. And if he didn't do those things, you're off the floor. You're just not going to be finishing games or playing in, pivotal minutes. So I think with the Thompson twins, we've been through it. They have playmaking. They can be disruptors on defense. They're versatile. They can get downhill. They're unbelievable in transition, but in half court situations, I do have some concerns there. But with that said, they are young and we have seen progress. They are better today at shooting the ball than they were a year ago. And I think that rate of progress is at least encouraging. And the tough part with them, though, I think is so often when it comes to projecting forward the success of a three-point shooter in the NBA, executives, especially the analytics side of things, look at, free throw percentage. They look at touch on layups and floaters. And, we had just mentioned how they're both hovering around 70% from the free throw line. They've been in the 60s before. It's not like they've ever been 80+% guys except for in short bursts like Ausar has been during the playoffs in the OT. So then you look at rim stuff. And in transition, these guys are unbelievable. Mann is 90%, 63 of 70 on at rim attempts. A lot of dunks in there too. Ausar, 45 of 58 in transition, 78%. Again, a lot of dunks. But in the half court, where things are more congested, Mann, 58.6% at the rim, just 50% on layups. That's so not including dunks, just 50%. And then Ausar, 47.6% at the rim and just 35.3% on layups, not including dunks. So he's hitting only a third. Ausar, this is only a third of layup attempts in the half court against a level of competition that doesn't have 7'2" shot blockers and 270-pound guys in the paint and 6'10" help defenders flying in to deter you from getting to the basket. He's hitting a third of his layups, non-dunks, in the half court. That, it needs to be a bit alarming, even though I believe, as you said, Kyle, a lot of it's due to shot selection too. With the types of shots you're hitting. I mean, we see Mann in game 2 hit that floating layup where he's just seemingly in the air forever. There's encouraging signs too with the types of layups they hit. But I don't know, where are you at when it comes to their at-rim finishing skills and whether or not that has to do with the projection of their shooting? But overall, that is going to be such an integral part of their success in the NBA is how they're able to finish at the basket.
Yeah, and it's sort of a chain reaction thing where, the finishing does matter a lot because it's going to be the thing that it's going to be the alibi, I think, that allows you to say, okay, they're going to provide this and release some of the pressure on them to be, shooters. Now, we know the paint touches thing, it's very Morant-y, the way that these guys get into the lane, except they're bigger, Mann has this ability, and Ausar too, like we said, just a slightly lesser extent. And I want to talk with our buddy Eric from P3 because I've asked him a little bit about this phenomenon, this optical illusion of floating, like you've talked about, because they have it. And he was telling me kind of that it's more in the midsection and sort of the ability to sort of stretch yourself out so that you hang a little bit longer, because it creates this interesting phenomenon of floating that Morant has. It's the same kind of thing. And sometimes, I guess, and you absolutely pointed out something I think that is a legitimate sort of counter argument if you wanted to, lean towards the side of like skepticism. Is the percentages. And that's something too, you mentioned like the size, but I think the other thing too that is really key, my eyebrows went up, that I think maybe gets underrated by people sometimes, is the bigger bodies. Like when you're going into the lane, these high school kids, positionally are just not as savvy. Like you learn a lot from like 18 to 23 about like where to be on the floor, and like what tendencies are and things like that. Those things are going to factor in. So you have to think about that percentage. Sometimes I think Mann specifically, displays a little more craft finishing than Ausar does. I think Ausar is a little bit more of a physical driver than Mann at times. But I think that Mann can be a little cute with his angles, with like, slinking around people.
Which helps him
to get his high glide. I think it's a positive thing that he has it. It's like a thing that he's exploring. Maybe there are more inefficient like corners of that part of his game that he can start to figure out and refine. But he also just has access to things that most players just don't. Like you'll see him get in, and they both are really good at like going to the other side of the rim and going high glass with touch. I don't doubt that they're going to get into the paint. I think they need to get stronger. I think, like we said, if the more discerning they get about getting to the rim. But it's just hilarious sometimes when you watch them, like the sample, you just have to kind of automatically weed. So you can't just look at that sample and be like, okay, they're finishing this percentage, because some of those drives against closeouts are just a joke. Like Mann had one where he drove baseline and did like a two-handed windmill. I will add, incredibly casually. He did a two-handed windmill in a game, but the resistance was just zero. Like there was no one guarding him at all. And that's the tough thing about OTE is like, not only do you not have those body types there, the effort, and sometimes I think like the opponents are just afraid of them. Do you ever see that when you're watching their games? It's like they act intimidated, and then you just add in all the chaos. It's just like the defense is a real issue, I think, for them, as opposed to if they were in like conference play right now in college.
Yeah, if they were in conference play at the moment, or what if they were in the G League? Like, I mean, how different would our assessments be of them at this moment? I don't think we'd be talking about game-winning shots and at the end of finals games necessarily. Granted, like season schedules, I just don't think they'd have their team in that position when those games were to happen. I mean, the level of competition makes it tough, Kyle. Like that, it's just like for me, like when I'm assembling my draft board right now at the moment, I have Mann 4th, I have Ausar 6th.
Yeah,
I don't feel great about it, to be honest with you. I just, like, it's a low confidence level. Like I have Jarris Walker ahead of Ausar Thompson, and Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, Cam Whitmore behind Ausar. Like I there's a part of me that feels like, how can I take Ausar Thompson ahead of Cam Whitmore when my confidence level in Cam Whitmore is higher in terms of being a high level productive NBA player for 10 years. Whereas with Ausar, it's like, yeah, I mean, he could become awesome, but he could also, this could be, just one little hot shooting stretch, and the at-room finishing never gets there, and he becomes just kind of a guy in the league who's super bouncy, but not somebody who contributes at a high level to winning basketball. I don't know. That's just it really speaks to the difference in your draft philosophies. Are you drafting for potential and upside and willing to miss and be totally wrong? Or are you being a little bit more safe and still holding out hope that your guy, turns into some star? That's kind of the difficulty I'm having right now with Mann and Ausar, in part because of the level of competition we're watching them against. So the young league, and only its second year, and like it's just straight up, their competition is not good. It's just not good. It's really weak. It's better than AAU, but nowhere near the same ballpark as college, G League, Australia. It's nothing. It's not compared to those leagues. It's really tough to compare.
Yeah, it does kind of enter in. It's similar to the LaMelo thing a couple years ago, where we were watching things that we were more sure about against a sample that we were more confident about schemes that were more, I don't know. Sometimes when these guys noodle at lower levels, you can get caught up in this idea that maybe they're going to continue to be that person whenever they transition over. And that's different from player to player. I'm encouraged by the fact, I would lean towards optimism about the idea that Amen and Nassar both have access to these like a broader finishing package. Like I think, and they seem like willing learners. Really, I'm more concerned about the consistency of the shooting than I am the finishing, to be honest with you, because, paint touches are extremely valuable in the NBA. And we've seen how slinky and angular and elastic they are at getting into the paint. I think once they get stronger, I'm not terribly worried about their frames. I am leaning in the optimistic side. I mean, there is that pit of your stomach thing. But I love the access to creativity that they have. And I'm pretty encouraged by some of it. They can pull off things that just the ordinary wing just cannot,
Let's take a question from Twitter. We had a great question from Chris at Swagskitball tweet us over the weekend asking for a temperature check on UCF's Taylor Hendricks, a guy that we talked about in the couple of maybe first 3-4 episodes of this podcast, Kyle. This season for UCF, he is averaging 15.6 points per game on 41.3% from three, 79.6% from the line, 6.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 1.7 blocks, 0.9 steals. He's having a good year, Kyle. I think for him, we talked about him as a sleeper type at the beginning of the season. I've had him in lottery, maybe since sometime in December. I have him top 10 right now, and maybe that's a bit too high with where he'll end up going. I see mock drafts have him late teens or 20s, but I have him as a top 10 pick because I think right now that the temperature check, like I'm higher on him than I was then because of the fact that we've seen him sustain success over the full season. He offers everything on defense. He's a great help defender. He's athletic. He provides size and switchability. We've seen him on many, many occasions this year switch onto the perimeter and lock down guards, or at least do a good job of containing them. So when you consider, what's important in the NBA, it's versatility on defense, his ability to help at 6'9", to switch, high IQ player, and offensively, he's shooting the heck out of the ball, 39%. He finishes well at the rim. He can screen and roll. He played as a big in high school. He has all those types of qualities. So I think, does he offer enough rim protection? The answer to Chris's question, yes. Does he have the pick and roll finishing to be a true center? Maybe small ball lineups, not necessarily full time, but I'm super, super high on Hendricks. Where are you at on him?
I differ a little bit. I think I'm probably leaning more towards late teens, middle of the first round, because, we've seen him, the shooting, absolutely. I think that we've seen, and even in the last 9 games, I think it's been even a little bit better, which I think is important because it's a time of the year where you've been scouted pretty thoroughly. And you're coming out there, and that conference maybe isn't like the tippy top best basketball conference in the country, but they do know where you're coming from and who you are. In his last 9, he's been almost 20 points per game. 47.1% from three on 5.7, and he's been pretty disruptive on defense. For me to get to where you are, I think you would have to hypothetically lean pretty hard on the idea that he's going to be like a real defensive tool. The hands and things are good, but when I look at like a cluster of guys, he is a versatile shooter, but there's this cluster of guys, Brandon Miller, Hendricks, Jarris, Grady Dick, and Jed Howard, who are all these kind of like bigger forwards who are going to give you some offensive punch. I think he's by far the least on-ball upside. Like he has by far the furthest to go as an on-ball guy to me. When I watch him like operating out of pick and roll, which has been limited this year, he looks a little averse to contact. You talk about getting in the lane. He doesn't look terribly like comfortable changing directions. Like his lower body doesn't. It's a major area of growth for him. That's kind of where I'm in. And like shooting off the dribble, he's looked a little weird at times. I just think that he's got quite a ways to go compared to those other guys for me to pick him ahead of those guys.
I think that's fair. I think my only thought on my mind is how much does that matter for him? Those skills. I mean, like how much do those actually matter in terms of fitting him into a winning basketball team, given like he doesn't do those things, but ideally he's paired with somebody else who does. Like, I mean, if we're like just, mock drafting on the fly here for the late lottery or late teens, if you put him on Golden State with the 18th pick, I mean, he's going to have to cut. He can do that. You have to make a quick pass. He can do that. Does he have to handle much? No. I mean, that's Steph. That's Draymond. That's maybe Poole if they keep him. I'm not so sure about that.
For now. Yeah.
If it's Atlanta, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray are doing all that. If it's the Lakers, with the 14th pick at the moment, that's LeBron and Schroeder and, all their guys that they have. I mean, he's playing more of a Jared Vanderbilt type of role, right? So except with better shooting. I don't know. I just that's kind of where I land with Hendricks. I just don't know how much that stuff matters. I think he has so many enhancing skills that can complement a star at such a high level. And I just feel like Hendricks is going to be one of those guys that's making winning basketball plays like in year 12 of his career. That's where I feel with him, regardless of the creation aspect.
I think there's only a couple teams, and then, our guy Nikias actually asked Steve Clifford a really good question about this, about like the homogenous nature of like the style of play in the NBA. And there's only really a couple teams that lean heavily on that off-ball movement. And a lot of that's player driven. And, like off-ball, if you're going to lean heavily on like off-screen shooting, that's personnel driven, and we have, Golden State in particular. I made a little jab there about like, for now, it's just because, Clay and Steph aren't going to be around forever. Miami, kind of plays that way too. I just think I'm not 1,000,000% convinced that he's that level of off screen. He's definitely a great catch and shoot player. And we've seen great catch and shoot players go to the next level. I underestimated Trey Murphy's ability, but I think, you talk about like how much it matters. I think it matters more by the minute in the NBA, just because I think that like off the catch, you got to be able to make something happen. If you're going to trade on your shooting ability, I'm a little more dubious of it, I think, which would pull me, not out. I'm a little less confident in like ranking him over those other guys just for that reason.
All right. So what we're going to do, Kyle, we're going to do a mock draft. We don't know the order. Our producer, Jessie Lopez, is heading over to Tankathon right now with their little fun lottery machine that I go to almost every day. And he's going to simulate the draft order based off the lottery standings as of this morning. And we're going to do a mock draft with the first 7-10 picks or so. Jessie, how are you doing today? Are you ready to be the commissioner?
I am ready. I didn't shave my head today, so I have a full set of hair, but it's okay. But I am ready to present.
He's got his mouse rat hat on, everybody should know. And his mic sounds incredible.
Yes, mouse
really
rat.
Killing it on all levels today. Yeah.
Let's see who knows who mouse rat is off the top of their head when
I
they
don't.
listen to this.
Lots
It's okay.
will.
Some
Parks
will.
and Rec.
Oh, no, I never watched it.
Parks and Rec is better than The Office. All right, simulating lottery.
False.
No, that is true. All right, with the number 1 pick, the ping pong ball went to San Antonio.
Oh, the Spurs.
San Antonio Spurs, the number 1 pick.
David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Victor Wembanyama. Number 1 picks. All right. Who
Good
else
for
we
Pop.
got?
Good for Pop.
Rattle them off for us, Jessie.
So number 2, moving up. Kevin, you're going to love this one. The Chicago Bulls.
Oh, yeah. Let's
Holy
go.
shit.
Okay. All right.
Holy shit.
All right. Who's 3?
Number 3, the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
Ooh.
Number 4, the Utah Jazz.
Oh, wow.
Number 5, the Detroit Pistons.
Wow. Detroit and Houston get screwed.
Detroit.
Number 6,
ouch.
Houston Rockets.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Number 7, Charlotte Hornets. 8, the Indiana Pacers.
Unreal.
Number 9, Kevin's Pelicans. And number 10, the Washington
Wow.
Wizards.
All right, Kyle.
Man.
Thank you, Jessie. Appreciate
No problem,
that.
guys.
Whoa. All right. If this actually happened on lottery night, Spurs, I mean, we'll alternate picks here. Spurs take Victor Wembanyama. That goes without saying.
I think that's pretty safe.
Yeah. That's safe to say.
I'm confident in that happening.
But
yeah.
Chicago,
which,
too.
another. Yeah. I was going to say, well, just the international sort of pedigree and the loyalty that they've had over the years. It would just be an interesting symmetry if they ended up with Vic. But yes, Chicago at 2, and this is a brutal beat. Just kind of proof that like this can be a cruel calculus, hopefully, well, not hopefully. It's just, I'm excited to see it. You never know. You never know, Kev.
Mm-hmm. You never know at all. So for the Bulls, you want second pick or third pick, Kyle? We'll alternate back and forth. Who do you want? Bulls or Magic?
I'll go with the Magic.
Okay. All right. So with the Bulls, number 2, moving up currently as of today, 5 spots. Good for them. Sucking this year, able to keep their top 4 pick, which would mean they would defer next year's pick to the Magic for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But this year at number 2, I got to think if you're Chicago, you go with Scoot Henderson there. He would remind Bulls fans of Derrick Rose with his explosiveness, that relentless downhill attacking ability. Different types of players in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. But going with Scoot Henderson there, he feels like somebody who could add a lot of energy to that franchise and give them a direction.
Yes, I could definitely see that happening. For the third pick, not to move on too quickly there, but for the third pick, I think this would be an interesting situation. I was talking with our buddy Cerruti about the Magic, like what they're going to do with their pick this year, what their plan is. It almost feels like some Orlando fans feel this way, where they feel like they're kind of at max capacity for young player development. Like that, it makes me wonder if it did play out this way. Agree or disagree with me on this, Kev, that like, I kind of wonder if the Magic might dangle this pick to somebody else to get a player. Because if you look at like the value kind of like hierarchy among this class, there's not like an exact fit for their exact needs. Like I feel like even Scoot might not even have been like a great pick for them there. I kind of feel like they need like a fluid off-ball mover. I kind of wonder if they would even use the pick at 3. What do you think?
I think they'd take Brandon Miller, assuming nothing's, super alarming with everything we've been discussing with him in recent weeks. They're 27th in three-point shooting this year. Granted, they don't necessarily need more size and versatility. They have that in surplus. Jonathan Isaac has not proven he can stay healthy. He gets hurt in 10 games.
It's a shame.
I mean, to me, Brandon Miller is an absolute no-brainer pick at 3, assuming, as we say, all of that checks out. But I think he's a perfect fit with what they got.
Yeah, I wonder, we don't need to go too far into this. I just kind of wonder, like, the Miller, Franz, Paolo thing is interesting because I'm like, yeah, it really helps for them to have, like, the off-ball movers and, like, the on-ball pressure that they could get with, like, Markelle and, like, Gary Harris. I just kind of wonder about taking another 3 in that situation. But I do think that, yeah, I mean, Miller is so talented. He's the guy. I actually have Miller second on my board overall right now. That's why I would just take the best talent and figure it out. I would just kind of move the pieces around it and take Brandon Miller.
Oh, so you move Miller up to 2 officially?
Yeah, I'm there.
Over Scoot.
Yeah. We can have a longer conversation about that.
Do you have Scoot at 3 or 4?
3 right now.
Okay. I'm in at 4.
Yes. Are you trying to like get the intel on my draft order here,
just
Kev?
curious.
I'm not going to just give that away.
It's not really. I mean, it's March 8th. It's going to change by June.
Dead serious. So serious.
That's true. We are drafting now. Today, this is serious business.
Yeah, so I'm trying to cut your throat.
With the 4th pick for the Jazz, I'm going with Mann Thompson. With the upside play here for them. They have, I think, one of the interesting things that Lauri Markkanen can provide for them is the spacing in the front court. So maybe that diminishes the need for Mann to be an immediate factor as a shooter, and they can rely on his playmaking. I mean, they have some guys in the backcourt, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. I'm not so sure how long of a future Clarkson's going to have with Utah, considering his age and the place that they are right now. Mann feels like the upside guy with the 4th pick who could be their longtime energizer, pairing him with Lauri Markkanen and their other young talent. Also imagine, running pick and roll against Mann Thompson and Walker Kessler protecting the paint. Like they could have a pretty formidable defense at the top and, in the interior as well with what they could build out there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Moving on to Detroit. Detroit, brutal beat for them if this plays out.
Oh my goodness, dude!
Cade missing the year. You really wanted to get up there as in that top 3 if possible. But I am going to go ahead, just considering the personnel that they have right now. I don't know that I'm going to add another like ball dominant or like ball needy kind of player into that situation. But I really like the idea of Jarris Walker with Detroit here. I think that he gives you a little bit more. He can play up or down in lineups. He can take tough assignments. As we've said, like big forwards that can guard big scoring forward playmaking players are very, very valuable. And I think this team could use that. I think next to Cade, he could become a good catch and shoot player. I even think he could run some ball screen with Cade if you wanted to play a little smaller. I think he just gives you versatility. I think that he would fit great in Detroit and really up their defensive integrity, especially next to Duren if Duren matures.
I mean, you get Detroit falling 4 spots, Houston falling 4 spots. I mean, like, this could happen on lottery night. This speaks to the whole theme we've been talking about all season, where you don't need to bottom out to move up with the way the draft lottery odds are. So I think for Detroit, what a bummer it would be, even though I love Jarris Walker. He's 5th on my board at the moment as well, and you have him going 5 here. I mean, but like missing out on some of those top guys like that. Like, never mind for Detroit, but also, like, at least Detroit feels like they have, I don't know, Cade, they have Duren.
Yeah.
It feels like they have something more tangible than Houston at the moment.
It doesn't seem like they're like hopelessly wandering. It's a little, I always like, there is something there. You have like some kind of like plan to go on. You have like a construct to go, like, okay, we'll go from here. Creates a map. But I think like Detroit, I was going to say to you, man, that like when I was kind of like figuring out like what the way I wanted to approach this, honestly, dude, we talked about the tiers last week. I think when I got to 4, I was like, damn. I was having broad arguments and sub arguments with it, where I was just like, you do that thing where you put, a name next to a number and you're just like, is he really a 5th pick? Is that guy really a 4th pick? Yeah. But I really think it kind of flattens there. Like, you really could make legitimate arguments. And I also think we're reaching that time of the year where the nitpicky kind of like data has added up and piled up to where like that like kind of nagging negativity, where I step back and I look at this class and I'm like, man, I started the year so excited about like all the different pieces in this, and maybe the flatness through there is making me think like, is this class as good as I thought? Are you feeling any of that, Kev?
I mean, I think it's a good role player class. I think it's a good role player class. With there will be, this is like a no-duh statement. It happens every year. There will be guys who pop and turn into something far more than expectations could have, set for them. Like guys like Gigi Jackson might go late teens, early 20s, and maybe he turns into a star in 5 years. Guys like, I don't know, Sissoko. We talked about him last week out of the G League. Maybe he ends up popping as a pick in the 20s. Maybe Grady Dick, becomes, a average to above average defender, and his offense keeps blossoming, and he's a 24, 25 point per game guy who makes some all-star teams. Like, I think you can project that for some guys in a best case, unlikely scenario. But for the most part, I think, right now for Houston with the 6th pick, I'm looking at Cam Whitmore, Keontae George, Anthony Black, a lot of guys that I'm like, they'll be good players, but will they be stars? Yeah. I mean, it's unlikely. I mean, somebody will pop. It always happens. It happens every year. So with that said, I'll go with Cam Whitmore with the selection. I mean, I just feel like he's the guy at this point. You look at what the Rockets are. First of all, if the Rockets were to fall this far to 6, I'd be doing one of two things, trying to trade up like mad with Orlando, with Utah.
That's what I'm saying, one of those Orlando.
Teams. Or I'd be saying I want to trade out and get a bunch of future picks to even further bolster my draft capital, to a team that is like in love with Cam Whitmore, in love with Oscar Thompson, whoever it is, right? Insert, player here. I'd be trying to trade out or trade up. And I wouldn't feel good about staying here. Like, what does Cam Whitmore do for you as the Rockets right now? Like, genuinely, what does he do for you right now when you are currently a mess and you're trying to potentially sign James Harden this summer? Like, there's no appeal in Cam Whitmore.
Just the fact that the sentence that you just said made my brain hurt. Well, they're a mess, Kevin, and yet you still drafted all their players in our draft at Salt Lake City. Look, so you must not think they're too much of a mess.
I like their players individually. It's just that draft we did was for like 5 years from now. But if I'm the GM of the team, if I'm Rafael Stone right now, am I going to be the GM in 5 years to see, all these selections work out, whether it's on my team or they get traded somewhere else? Like, that needs to, if you're the Rockets right now, enter the equation a little bit, considering, all indications are they plan to be better next season. So I'll go with Cam Whitmore. He seems like the guy that most fits the profile of somebody who could help on defense, offer some spot-up shooting, downhill attacking. He's flashed upside as a scorer. Let's go with Cam Whitmore at number 6. But boy, oh boy, like if this were to happen on lottery night, they're a team that's going to be trying to trade up or out, I would think, when I look at their situation.
Yeah, if they trade out, I kind of wonder if how the grumbling. I've been just kind of monitoring from afar Rockets Twitter and just kind of observing the tone of their conversations. And there's been just a little bit of infighting, a little bit of like, oh shit, maybe we're not. There's been a little. I've just noticed. I keep an eye on you guys. I don't get in there and box with you because I just don't feel like it. But it's been fun to observe. That order of like Case and Whitmore, Asar, like I just think like how you value these wings and these forwards is just fascinating to discuss because I feel like that's one of the more interesting things to talk about in this draft. But if we're talking about the Charlotte Hornets, who deserve a little bit of buzz, that was an inadvertent thing.
Falling down them for
7 is tough. 7 is tough. But I'm looking to add, defensive integrity on the wing. I might surprise you here, Kevin.
Hendricks?
I thought no, not Hendricks. You're not going to see this coming, I don't think. And I thought about whether or not to do this because I know I get shit for who I root for, but I'm actually going to take Case and Wallace here. I actually think that he's going to give you some two-way. He's going to be able to guard point guards. He's going to be able to hit open shots. He's shown some playmaking flashes in the last month since Kentucky's optimized their lineups and helped him, I think, in a spatial way. I just think that I think Kaysen, we have not seen the best of Kaysen, and I think he's a good fit for what they need. I'm gonna go with Kaysen Wallace there, but it was close. There's more to talk about with that, but
I think that's a quality pick. So with Kaysen Wallace, I mean, you watch every Kentucky game, hardcore, edge of your seat, crying when they lose. Your day's made when they win.
Not since 97. I haven't cried since I was 11, but I've been mad. I've been really mad.
Really mad, yeah. Yes. Tell me about the development of Kaysen Wallace this year. Are you, clearly, if you're drafting him here with the 7th pick, you feel some level of confidence in him and having a chance to blossom? I mean, where's the mindset behind having Wallace 7?
He blossomed. He showed some playmaking pop, I thought, in EYBL last summer. And I think that, I'm losing track of my time here, but I think that like over the course of the year, I think there's a health thing that you need to watch out for. But we've talked about him as like a dribble pull-up shooter. My main thing too, man, is that like, A, I think he's smart. B, I think that he is kind of unflappable. Like he's a really hard worker from everything that I hear, even through the ups and downs of their kind of shitty year that they've had. He has been just consistent and kept coming back. I think that once he gets a little bit healthier, he's kind of had an up and down health season. I think he's going to be a really disruptive player. He's really strong. I think he's positionally going to be hard. He's one of those guys that like you're going to have to drive through his chest, and I think he's strong. He's just going to be a pain. And I think he's that's a player that Charlotte needs. When you get the two-way stuff that he's going to provide, I think he's going to kind of bolster their personality, I think, on the perimeter with his defense.
I like the pick. So now number 8, Indiana Pacers. I mean, this is a strange spot for them because you look at, the top guys available on my board right now, just throw them out there. Asar Thompson, Keontae George, Grady Dick, Taylor Hendricks, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Gigi Jackson, just go down the board even further. Like they have Tyrese Halliburton, he's their engine. They just took Benedict Mathurin last year, and he looks like a very promising young guy. Andrew Nembhard, we've talked about him throughout the year on this podcast. Granted, he's more of like a high-end backup, good rotation starter. He's another smaller guard. So I don't think for them, a Keontae George makes a ton of sense. I don't think Anthony Black or even Nick Smith makes a ton of sense considering what they already have fit-wise. Maybe if you're straight up just drafting best player available, you're going with them. So I kind of come down between Asar Thompson and Grady Dick for the Pacers at this point. If it's Grady Dick, that probably means you're more willing to move a Buddy Hield. We see how well the dynamic is in the backcourt between Halliburton and Hield. I think if you're drafting Dick, it's going for a younger version of a guy in that player construct and somebody to build with in the next 5 to 10 years. Whereas Hield, he's 30 years old. He can become a free agent after next season in 2024. Maybe Hield becomes an appealing trade chip for the Pacers if you go with Grady Dick rather than Asar Thompson. With that said, though, Osar Thompson has a higher defensive ceiling, and it's going to be important to add that to your rotation next to Halliburton, next to Mathurin, and build out that wing position. So I am going to go with Osar Thompson here for the Pacers with the 8th pick. You hope that he continues shooting, 35% plus from three, and he's at least a threat out there, and he can move the ball. He's excelled for years next to his brother, playing as like a secondary guy. I think he'd be a natural fit next to Halliburton as long as, that shooting, as we talked about earlier, develops. But I'll go with Osar Thompson.
I think I brought this up earlier in the year that I actually think, I remember joking with you about the idea of one of the Thompson brothers out there with Halliburton as like a guy who gives you take pressure off of his playmaking. He can we know that the ball moves when Halliburton's out there. And then you put this super athlete in this position to play off the catch and get in the lane. That idea, you've created this kind of loop. I always think about, these. You want to create these like closed loops of flow. And I feel like that is a very tantalizing idea, I think, if you are the Pacers. So next up is New Orleans. Let's see.
They're tanking. They're tanking hard, Kyle. Woo. Oh, boy.
What a plummet, man.
Oh,
good grief. Considering where we were earlier in the year, we were just raving about them. I think they were kind of the hot new energy kind of a thing. It was exciing.
Zion was
question
healthy.
Here is, that's basically what it comes down to. It's like, it's a deflating thing. For them to fall to this spot, you kind of think, okay, are they going to take another perimeter guy? Are they going to take a big? Are they going to take another ball handler? I think they have enough, I think they have the ball handling kind of covered. But also you're like, okay, do you want to just take the best player available? I'm usually in favor of best player available. Your confidence level in what's that?
Who is it? Is there a clear best player available?
No, I'm not sure. I know you're going to tease me about Nick Smith and how much I love him, but I just don't know about Nick Smith going into that environment, and I don't know that he's so good that you're just like, okay, we'll take him regardless. I don't know that he's that level of talent. I'm going to surprise you here, and I keep saying that, but probably not. I'm going to take Jett Howard here, actually. Oh. I think Jett Howard's shot-making upside. I think he gives you some insurance for the future should you have some. I think he has potential as he's in his freshman year still at Michigan. He showed a lot of efficiency, shooting the ball off the bounce. He's shown some playmaking upside. He's somebody that you can just kind of put in there and be insurance that does have star upside. I do think that he shows some of that stuff, and he's got great size, like we've talked about. I'm going to take Nick Smith for the Pelicans there.
All right, last pick here, number 10, the Wizards. First of all, I'm saying to Bradley Beal, hey, Houston's offering 4 first-round draft picks for you. You want to go there and play with Harden?
Oh, my God.
You want to go to Houston? First of all, I'm saying that to Bradley Beal. I think they should be rebuilding. But with the 10th pick, this year for them, I mean, Keontae George, if you're keeping Bradley Beal, it's Keontae George, Bradley Beal, the way you want to build it out. Is Nick Smith, Bradley Beal, the way you want to build? Is
this what this was all for? That's what I'm saying. If I'm a Houston fan, I'm like, is this where we went? I feel good about Şengün being there. I love Tari. I did. There are some pieces here that I'm confident about.
I'm not talking Houston. I'm talking Washington strictly. If
I know. I'm just saying, let's say Houston makes those moves and that's where they end up. So then you're Beal, Harden, Green. How do I feel if I'm Jalen Green? I'm like Jalen Green. I'm like, I was on this path to be a star.
You don't feel great. You don't feel great. I mean, you're too tiny. You're too small. That would be something out of desperation. And maybe you're flipping Jalen Green if you're Houston in that scenario. If you really are pressured by Fertitta to win now or lose your job, I don't know. We'll see how that pans out for Houston. I'm just spitballing on that side of things.
Sure.
And maybe it's not even Harden. Maybe they just trade for Beal. But that's also a weird Beal Green on the Houston side of things. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
I can't imagine they do that.
For the Wizards here, if they're keeping Beal, if he's staying there, I feel like Anthony Black makes most sense fit-wise at this point next to Bradley Beal. 6'7", size, can defend, moves the ball. That feels like a good backcourt fit right there. If you're Washington, I don't think there's a clear cut, Keontae George is the highest guy remaining on my board. I think if you're selecting him, the fit with Beal is very poor. But he'd be the guy I'd select if my intentions are to move Beal. But I'll go with Anthony Black for the purposes of this mock draft with our 10th and final pick of this little fun mock draft. This would be wild if this actually ended up being the order. Spurs
Oh my God.
1, Bulls 2, Magic 3, Jazz 4, with Pistons, Rockets, and Hornets all moving down. Damn.
Yeah, I would be curious to ask Popovich. I'm not like a wine guy. Maybe we could consult Bill because he knows about wine. But like, if I got a chance to ask Pop a question, I'd be like, let's say Wembanyama, you end up with him on draft night. Which bottle are you opening? Are you opening your best bottle that night? Like, are you going to go into because I know Pop is a wine guy. I'm just like, are you cracking open one, your oldest bottle? I just think that would be Twitter would melt down if this would happen. There would just be so much heartbreak. I think it would be a really tough gut punch for some of these teams that have been wandering and really, really need something to go their way this year. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting excited thinking about it though.
Well, Kyle, we'll be back again next week. You're doing OSP again next week as well?
That's the plan. And I'm going to be out there.
And the answer?
I think so. Yeah, pretty positive. Yeah, like I said, it's been a little chaotic this week. I didn't do the answer this week. Pina filled in for me just because we have bounced from hotel to Airbnb to friend's house. We moved 4 times in 5 days with a dog and a toddler. So I've just kind of I'm from someplace with stable internet for now. We got the job done. So yeah,
weather
problems. The power's back on. Yeah, the wind blew down like this super old tree in our neighborhood, like 80 feet from our house. And like I told you, it looked like the boxer Butterbean leaning on like the ropes of like a boxing ring. Like, so our power's been out and hopefully they're going to fix that. But yeah, I'll be back in the OSP thing and I'm going to be out in LA to watch the first weekend of the tournament with Tate. And I'm sure I'll see you and I'm sure we'll talk and I'm sure some content will come out of that. And man, I'm very excited about that.
We'll have to hang out in LA. I look forward to that, Kyle. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing as always. Hope you have a good rest of your week.